Per usual, everything on this channel is for educational purposes only and is not intended as financial advice. It's set up Sunday. Let's take a look at some charts. It was a big week for the Bitcoin ETFs last week after several weeks of essentially nothing, negative weeks back to back. Some will say this represents a peak in interest, a peak in what we could see. This is the top. I'm not of that camp. This is the second highest weekly net inflow for the ETFs. If we're going to continue this route of pushing price higher, we're going to need somebody to step in and buy, whether that's Sailor or one of the other 10 to 20 companies trying to copy the playbook, or it's the ETFs. It's certainly not retail. Retail, Google Trends will tell you, not much retail activity. Altcoin activity will tell you, mostly retail ain't here yet. So it's good to see flows start to wake up, especially when we are seeing what we are seeing on the legacy side, with prices being angry and down most of the time. So you're getting a big week at a big time for the narrative. If we look at a few big picture charts that I think are important, we can talk about global liquidity, fine, we can talk about whatever. But of all the charts that I've ever looked at, for all the cycles that I've ever been here, to me, outside of the daily cloud, of course, these are the best indicators of overbought, oversold. That's all you're really asking. If you hear from cycle to cycle, where are we today in the cycle? Overbought, oversold. I don't care about right translated, left translated. I don't care. I don't care if we go another 4 years. That doesn't matter to me. I don't care if it's done tomorrow. What matters to me is where are we today? If you look at the 2-year moving average and then 5 times the 2-year moving average, it gives you this zone, an oscillator. Top of the band here, currently today's 291. Will we get there? I don't know. Will it continue to move up? It will. When will we get there? Also don't know. But the point is, if we get close to that level, that says, hey, time to pay attention. Time to probably start selling instead of buying. Better places to buy than 5 times the 2-year moving average. And you can say, well, all the models will be broken. Okay, fine. That's fine. All I have is the model that has worked for the past 10 years. All you have is data points to tell you it's not going to be different this time. This is the Mayer multiple, also similar, 214,000 currently today at the top end. And you can look at, we're just comparing the previous cycles. What happened? Where are we now? We're at the bottom. We're at the bottom. And if you look at the 2-year, where are we at relatively to the high and the low? We are closer to the low than the high. I like the odds. We can look at the 20-week moving average relative to price. We're also at the bottom band of the 20-week moving average. We're basically, today, we are at the 20-week moving average. So we're not overbought by any stretch of the imagination. The last time we were here, we were mega overbought. And that's the difference between time. It allows the moving averages to catch up, obviously. And we have recovered twice already this cycle after dipping below the 20-week moving average, something we didn't do in 2017. So is it different this time if we recover? No, it's not. It's actually what we've seen already for the past 2 years is a dip down below the 20-week and then recovery. Should we continue? We can look at the power law, something that's been around for a long time that obviously has gotten talked about a lot over the past 2 years. But this continues to hold at the midpoint. We look fine. Again, are we overbought or are we oversold? Buy, sell, or hold. That's all we're asking. Buy, sell, or hold. Certainly closer to a buy than a sell, and it's definitely a hold here for me, not financial advice. 200-week moving average heat map. This just tells you how fast are we from the 200-week moving average, and we are ice cold, baby. We are ice cold, not going anywhere. And then probably the most important on-chain indicator would be market value versus realized value, market cap versus when the last time coins have moved on-chain. And what does that look like? That is also down here at 2 something. Extremely low relative to what we have ever seen historically for cycle peaks. And we will say, and I will agree, that on-chain activity is different this time with ETFs than it ever has been. But buy, sell, or hold, what is it here? Certainly closer to a buy and definitely a hold relative to where it could go. This isn't a game about accuracy. This is a game about probabilities. Where could it go? Well, it could go a lot higher still. Now, if MVRV was at 6+, and if we were screaming on the 200 week and we were close to the power law and we were screaming on the multiplier, right? If these things all looked a lot different, then it would be much easier to say, pack it up, go home, cycle over. Thanks for playing. We're not there yet. Like I said on Thursday's stream, I was going to run an Ichi Screener to check some edge-to-edge potentials So we'll go over that in the altcoin section of this video. I will put a link to this screener in the description of this video, along with a referral link to a little exchange called Kraken.com, where you can make an account and take such trades. And I've been hearing, this is just things, word on the street, people are waking up well rested after using the link, making an account. People are waking up, they can see uncorrected, without glasses. It's amazing. It's amazing what's going on, the things that are happening after making an account using that referral link in the description of this video. But what are we looking at here? We're looking for edge-to-edge percentages from the current price. The thinking here is if everything starts to turn bullish, then it doesn't matter what you're trading to some degree, right? If we're just trying to look for potential here, here's where things sit. And we'll take a look at a lot of these charts in a second. But just value-wise, you got to think about Doge, and I'm not bullish ETH whatsoever. This is something to think about probably in May, end of May, but there's a big potential mean reversion on ETH as well. Not a today trade. I need to make that crystal clear. Not a today trade. There's a few today trades that I like. ETH is the last one. It is the laggard. Not a today trade. Doge, more far along than ETH, has a better potential, but we'll take a look at a few of these in a second. Another chart other than the cloud that I think is important here is the pitchfork, the channel, the trend channel that we are in, have been in since 2022. We can call this a falling wedge. At this point, I think probably we've broken up. There was a lower time frame IHS that we've broken up from. It was ugly. We're above the cloud. We have a bullish TK cross. TK cross is below the cloud. That's kind of ticky-tacky. It's okay, but it's weird, right? It's better if everything is trending higher above the cloud. So it just tells you it's a little early to expect continuation here. Cloud itself, obviously, also not bullish. The best movements higher are likely going to be once we start to flatten out the lower time frame moving averages. At this point, those moving averages are screaming all over the place. We've got the higher moving averages from higher time frames moving down still. We've got ultra low time frame moving averages screaming higher. When that stuff starts to normalize, then we're talking about probabilities and likelihoods here. Then you'd expect the trend to take off in a bigger way. So what do you expect here? Probably flat to down for a week. Not going to expect a miracle this week. But where could this go is the important part, and that is potentially 122, 150. That is the zone, similar to where we were in the March high, in the December high. Nothing crazy, nothing out of the ordinary relative to the trend channel. One other Bitcoin thing that popped this week, if we look at the white line, that's Bitcoin. The green line is the global liquidity, which continues to sit at all-time highs. I think at this point, everybody knows that we lag global liquidity by a couple weeks, but the big thing here on the bottom is commitment of traders, data, commercials, miners, net long versus net short. Takeaway here is we really don't go up unless the miners are net long, and they've just flipped net long last week. This may be short-lived, it may go nowhere, but this is where we want it to be. And the more weeks we have them net long or getting even longer, large specs getting even shorter, which is not on this chart, this is very bullish for BTC. So much like we had in and around the election, commercials just stayed long and then price took off. That's something to watch for this go around here at 93. So if we flip to Kraken desktop and just looking at the cloud fractals relative to price, one of these is very much not like the others, and that of course is ETH. It is just lagging. If you had to pick today, what do you do? Buy, sell, or hold. It's not a buy for me today. It needs to get much further along into the cloud. Maybe you get an IHS here. It's clearly out of the ultra aggressive line channel thing that it was in down here. It's out of that at this point, but most alts are out of their downward channels at this point. So that isn't really asking much. On a relative basis, it is just behind. Okay. Now this might catch up eventually, but to me, they're just better trades to take right now. I would look to 2,500 should ETH pull up this quarter. Majority of these charts look like Solana, which is this panel here. It is kind of nestling itself into the cloud, and you may get some of this stuff where it just kind of like lazily eventually gets into the cloud. You get a TK cross, currently bearish. If that flips bullish, great. Then you have your edge to edge move, and that is a high hit rate trade on a high market cap coin. This is where you want to live. You really don't want to live on the sheet. I separated out top 250 versus top 100 market cap. The deeper you go down that list, you may see some wild numbers on mean reversion, but the reality is those are unlikely to play out, right? So to see Sol setting up for this, we may get a right shoulder here, we may not, whatever. There was clearly some sort of bottoming attempt happening into April. But anything that looks like this with a bullish TK cross is a huge setup for 195. So it's a little early. It's a little early, but it looks excellent, right? It's up 95 to 150. Great move. Let it take a breather. Again, let the moving averages on lower time frames catch up. Bullish TK cross. I like that as a high conviction, high confidence, high leverage setup situation. So not there yet on Sol, but looks great, undeniably. There are a lot of charts that look like Sol on the bottom here. I have ENA, AVAX, PEPE, MOG, various degrees of this. PEPE is actually probably the furthest along. If we look at it in the, sorry, this is ENA. Let's go to PEPE here. If we go, PEPE has the bullish TK cross. It's in the cloud. There's probably some sort of lower time frame head and shoulders potentially here. I don't really care about that personally. But what I do like is the double bottom. I do like this banging into the cloud here. And I do like this mean reversion potential. Notice how this took months. ETH is just not there yet. So I would mentally benchmark everything against charts that look like this. If they don't look like this, to me, they're just not ready. Just on the setups that I like. AVAX is close. It's close. It is also similar, waiting on that bullish TK cross, trying to get into the cloud there. Don't hate it whatsoever. Decent edge to edge. ENA, I mentioned, very large edge to edge. One thing idiosyncratic with ENA, I think the higher the funding goes, the higher the ENA price goes, because the more that the protocol is harvesting from the premium. Funding is largely, mostly negative, honestly, over the past couple of days. I think it's slightly positive now, but just something else to watch outside of technicals would be a strong funding push. That's when I think ENA would actually start to do better. But again, like, it's farther along than ETH, not as far along as PEPE. If we're trying to like put this in some sort of chronological order of expectations, ENA would need more time. MOG as well is probably further along than ENA. It is a meme coin, lower market cap, and now we're getting into the realm of more difficult on the probabilities just because it's a smaller coin and may or may not play out as you'd expect. SWI is one that has certainly outperformed, I think, most people's expectations as far as leading Solana here. It's leading ETH here. It looks more like BTC than an alt. Huge move off the bottom. You didn't get much of a chance to do anything here unless you were paying attention. But this is honestly the worst case scenario for this setup because it doesn't give you an entry that you'd want. And it reached the target already. So now what do you do here? Nothing. There's nothing to do. This probably needs weeks to months to flatten out and to run again. That isn't to say it can't keep going or won't keep going. It's just this is a huge move in like 4 days, right? You got to give it some time. And it's the same thing with BTC. You got to give this some time to normalize these levels, chop around a little bit. Not really much to do up here at the moment. We'll see how Legacy opens on Monday. A few others from that list, like I said, Doge. Again, like if you're looking for a slam dunk, high conviction setup, I don't care what this looks like today. I don't care that it's lagging. I just care that I'm there when it actually moves. So to see this still setting up, to me, is excellent. This is what you want to see. You want to see shoulder, head, shoulder into the edge to edge with a bullish TK cross with the target staring you in the face. That is a huge move for an extremely high market cap coin, right? Perfect. WIF was another one, maybe a little problematic depending on coin supply, and maybe there's again some idiosyncratic stuff with who's trading what and why. But this one as well probably needs a little bit more time. Like, we're getting close. We are less than a month away from everything starting to pop off in a big, big way. Some of the stuff already moved quite a bit. PopCat up quite a bit. We talked about that one last week. Bonk as well. Already in the cloud. Kind of missed the entry a little bit on that one. But another one that popped up on the screener that I was kind of surprised was Uni. I guess if you're bullish DeFi, the difficulty here is if this is ETH beta and you're trading this ahead of ETH turning the corner, I think it's a little early. But something to rotate into after, let's say, like best case scenario, right? Let's say all this stuff plays out. You get trades on Doge, you get trades on WIF, you get trades on whatever. Solana, ETH still lagging. You rotate into ETH, then you get a trade on this. Maybe you like Uni for whatever DeFi reason. But mentally, I think it's important to line these up and to see, like, if this turns around, big if, like, that's a huge percentage move to any of these cloud levels. Would love to see what this looks like in May, but a little early at the moment. ARB is another one popped up on the screener. I think a lot of these ETH beta charts are just slammed so hard that the moment ETH turns the corner, it's almost better to trade these instead of ETH, right? Like, yeah, you could trade ETH and probably do fine. These percentage moves are a little bit better than ETH. Optimism, another one. Say was another one. And you get the point, right? Like we're out of this downward channel. We're trying to bottom. We're trying to base. We're trying to get into the cloud. That's the setup here right now for most of these coins. Say was another one. It is less about what this is. It really, the ticker is irrelevant. That's the takeaway ultimately. It doesn't matter. As long as BTC is doing what BTC does and is more bullish than bearish, alts can do okay. Alts can have this rolling bullishness to them. But if you're trying to be the ultimate market timer, I think alts have a little bit left in the tank as far as consolidation goes. Just saw Monero's at 15%. Not really quite sure why, but hey, one of the few places on the planet you can trade Monero is on Kraken. Most everything quite red on my list for the day. Monero is an interesting one in that on days like today, it is inverse to the rest of the market. It's almost like a safe haven on its own. One last one I was looking at was Algo. That one as well has a daily setup here where we will very likely get a right shoulder on this. This is exactly what you want to see. That is why trading this stuff on the way down makes no sense whatsoever. When most of the time you get stuff like this, you just have to wait it out. You just have to be patient enough to wait it out. And then one last chart in that same vein would be Sol BTC. Not quite there yet, but again, we are like 1, 2, 3 weeks away max at this potentially triggering. And maybe that's because BTC holds up slightly better here than alts. But this stuff is starting to look very, very good for a little run here in the second month of Q2. A few quick legacy things before I get out of here. Gold looks like an inverse dragonfly, shooting star, call it whatever you want. It's not a bullish candlestick for the weekly, definitively. This isn't a game about guessing tops or bottoms. But if you had to choose a probability based on candles that look like this, irrespective of what this is and what's going on, you would say that looks like a top. That is not a bottom. That is not a continuation. So it would make more sense to me if gold hung out here somewhere 3,000-ish zone, probably no lower than 2,900, but probably makes more sense for gold to chill out a little bit, and that's very bullish for BTC. SPX on the monthly has hit the key June bounce on the monthly. It has done this a couple times since 08. 08, by the way, was the last time the cloud actually flipped back and forth on the monthly. So we can and have seen bullish continuations for a monthly key June bounce on the S&P. The last one was in 2022. It takes time, but this is one way to start to right the ship a little bit. Throughout the week, I would keep an eye on the VIX. The VIX is probably going to be up on Monday based on futures, based on what's happening right now in the overnight session into Monday. But if the VIX continues to decline and get anywhere below 20, BTC and alts will like that a lot. The more this settles down, the better for risk assets. 10-year also settling in a little bit at around 4.25. If that can continue to push lower and hold those lows, great. And it's kind of odd because you either want this above 5% and intervention, devil and angel, right? The devil's saying, okay, just punch it to 5%. Let's see what happens. If not that, then let's keep it as close to 4% or lower as we can. Because in the middle here, it's just anxiety. It's anxiety of how high it's going to go and when it's going to go there, and QRA and tariffs and inflation, right? It's all this other stuff. It's not conducive to a non-fearful environment that risk assets like. And much like the VIX, the MOVE index has also come down. This is the VIX of bonds. And if you just think this was COVID, huge spike. This was Silicon Valley Bank exploding, huge spike. This was the biggest spike we've had since the Gary trade unwind. But it has come back down So the closer this gets to 95 or less, the better. And we can be on our merry way here with some bullish continuation for BTC. But for this week, I really don't expect too much on crypto land. And for a lot of these alts, that's what you want to see. You want to see them continue to consolidate, continue to hold those levels, and perhaps maybe buy some of the blood happening this week, getting ready for some of those edge-to-edge setups coming in May. That's all I got for this one. Give me a like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe. Don't forget about that amazing Kraken referral link in the description of this video. And happy trading.